Okay, let's give this a try.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I'm making ragu alla bolognese with homemade pasta, so that's why this beast is out. Um, for the ragu, I'm going to use the traditional recipe that is provided by the Chamber of Commerce of Bologna. So it's a very simple recipe from a flavor perspective, and contains really, so ground beef should be, this is lean ground beef, it's a little, maybe on the lean side, should be a little fattier. um, Pancetta, or this is unsmoked pork belly, which I was surprised they actually had it at the grocery store. Normally, I would use mild Italian sausage in something like this in order to get a bit of fat in it, but luckily they had the actual thing, so about 150 grams of the pork belly, and then about 200 grams of tomatoes, and these are San Marzano tomatoes, so should be good. Then we've got some chicken stock, tomato paste, and then the sort of trifecta of vegetables here: celery, onion, and carrot. Not a whole lot of them, about 60 grams each. And then we got half a cup of red wine and half a cup of milk. And along with salt, pepper, and olive oil, that's all that's in the ragu. Now the ragu takes normally about 3 hours to make. I'm going to try to do this in about an hour. We'll see how it goes. My plan is to do the sauce first, and then when it's simmering away, then do the pasta, and then by the time it's all done, be ready to go. So we'll see how it works. So I'm going to get this set up and chop the vegetables, and we'll get cooking. Thanks. Now we're going to chop the vegetables, and these are basically chopped in a very fine dice. So it was a fairly quick job. I also diced up the pork, and one thing I did, I could have diced the pork a lot smaller. I had basically just sort of sliced it and then cut it one more time, but probably should have diced it up in a little smaller, because you certainly could got chunks of pork in the final product. Wasn't a problem, but still delicious. But yeah, next time I do it, I'll chop it up a little bit more. So once we go to the stove, adding about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to the pan, and then we'll add the pork and let that sort of melt down a little bit. The fat doesn't completely render at this point. Things will start to get a little brown, but it really does render in the final sauce. So the final sauce didn't have any pork fat in it. At this point, I didn't get too fussed about it. So once that seems it's been cooking for about 5 to 10 minutes, then basically I'll add the vegetables to it. And these really are just cooking until the onions get translucent. So things are already starting to smell pretty good. And while that's cooking, I've got about 2 cups of chicken stock here, and I'm adding 1 cup to this small pot, because we do add chicken stock to the recipe, and it calls for it to be boiling so that it doesn't lower the heat. So we'll get that cooking in the meantime, because we'll be using that in a few minutes. And now I think we are ready. We're going to add in the beef. So beef goes in, and then we break it up. For this, you can use a potato masher, you can use a pastry cutter. I'm using the 2 spatula method, but with a view to just putting it in there and starting to get it brown. It takes about 10 minutes, and you can see that things are really starting to get going there. After about 10 minutes after it's browned, add in the half cup of wine. And here you can use red or white. I happen to have red, so that's what I used. And put that in till it evaporates another 2 or 3 minutes. And then we'll add in a tablespoon of tomato paste. I did add another tablespoon later on in the cooking. You can see here that the tomato paste, not a lot, doesn't really change the color that much. And just put it in, stir it around, let it cook off a little bit, and then we'll add in the tomatoes. And again, going to break up those tomatoes. You can break these up before you add them. After you add them, it doesn't really matter. They sort of disappear into the sauce. And now that all of that is in, things are simmering quite nicely. We're going to add in that chicken stock, give it a stir, and there's another cup on the side just in case things get dry at any point. I didn't need to use it, but so once all that's mixed in, I moved it to a smaller burner, put it on the smallest heat, lowest heat that I had, and basically let that simmer. And now we'll go back to the pasta and make the pasta. So here with the pasta, we have the all-purpose flour, and I'll link the recipe for this pasta down below. It's about 2 cups of flour and 4 egg yolks plus 2 whole large eggs go into it, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. So pretty simple. So I added the salt to the flour, get it mixing, and then we will add the eggs. And you just get this mixing until it really comes together with the paddle attachment. So it takes probably a minute or two, and then once it comes together, starts forming a dough, we'll take the paddle attachment off and we'll add the hook, and then knead it for about 3 minutes till it comes together. The recipe that I'm linking actually does it manually, the manual process, but it takes about 10 minutes manually and about 3 minutes with the machine. So pulling it out, it's a fairly sticky dough. I'm just going to bring it together. I knead it on the counter for 3 or 4 times, and that just brings it together into a nice smooth dough. And I've got some plastic wrap here ready to roll, and we'll just put this aside for about 30 minutes, and that lets it hydrate. It'd be almost impossible to put it through the pasta cutter right after it's been mixed. It needs to relax for a bit. So coming back after 30 minutes, got to make sure everything's well floured. So I took that dough ball, I divided it into 4, and then each one of those 4 pieces turns into one of these things which I fed through the machine to roll it out. I didn't really dwell on the pasta making part, but if you're interested, put it in the comments and I can do a deep dive video on making that pasta. So once I've rolled out all the pasta, I come back and I'm adding the milk. So it's been about an hour that this has been simmering, and I'll add in the milk, and at this point I'm leaving the lid off and I'm just going to let it boil down and thicken. If I had more time, I'd probably let it simmer for another hour and then take the lid off, but so it's simmering, and then I come back to the pasta, which now you can see I've got that all these sheets, and I've changed cutters to the fettuccine cutter. So here it comes through, and that cuts the fettuccine. So each one of these sheets creates one of these balls of pasta. So there's 1 ball of dough created 4 smaller balls. Each of those smaller balls of dough created 2 of these sheets, which creates two of those bunches. And now we're ready. The pasta, I got the pasta water rolling. You can see it's a small pot with not much water because I want to really concentrate the starch, because I'm going to use the starchy water when I pull the pasta together. So I'll throw the 4, I'm starting with 4 things of pasta, which is basically 2 portions. Cooked it for about a minute once it came to a boil. So that's about 90 seconds in total. And what I've done is I've got the pan here, threw in a few spoonfuls of sauce into the skillet with a bit of more olive oil, which I probably didn't need, but added anyway. So it's simmering to that, adding that pasta, the fresh pasta, and going to bring it together. And this is where you want to add the pasta water. It'll help the sauce cling to the pasta. So I'll give it a mix, add in some pasta water, then sort of turn up the heat a little bit just to get a bit more action here. And you can see that it's coming together, but could use a little bit more sort of moisture to bring it together. So I'll add in a bit more of that pasta water. And you can see how the pasta water, how starchy it looks. That's because I had a very small pot and really really concentrated it. You don't need a huge pot of water. The pasta didn't stick. It worked pretty well. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the sauce here. And then I'll add one final spoon of the pasta water. And it's really coming together nicely, looking delicious. And there we go. We'll add that into the bowl. And I'm going to top that with a bit of Parmesan cheese. And we'll go move to the taste test and see how we did. But it certainly looks and smells delicious.
Okay, let's give this a try. Yeah, it's delicious. The noodles are al dente. I added about a teaspoon of kosher salt to the ragu when it was almost done, plus a fair bit of black pepper too, just because it had been unseasoned up to that point. What's interesting about this is there's so little tomato in it. It's basically a meat sauce with some tomato. At some point during the simmering, I also did add a bit more tomato paste, but so in total it's probably 2 tablespoons in there, but still not much. But no, this is a win. Took probably about an hour and a half, start to finish, but certainly delicious. Thank you very much.